Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, November 10th, 2025. I am Dave Biddle flying solo on today's show. Dan Rubin is off this week, so you guys are stuck with me all week. I'll be talking recruiting tomorrow with the Grand Poobah, Mark Porter, and Garrick Hodge. He's just doing a fantastic job for us since bringing him on. He's been with us now for over 2 months. So tomorrow I'll be with you with the usual Tuesday guest, but I'll be filling in for Dan tomorrow. So, you guys are stuck with me all week, but welcome into the show. A lot to get into. I mean, it's been a really, really good few days of recruiting for Ohio State, starting last Thursday, when they flipped Jay Timmons, and then they land Mason Wilhelm, Matt Wilhelm's son, which I absolutely love. And then yesterday getting the really high 4-star defensive tackle, Emanuel Ruffin. I absolutely love that. Going to the South and getting a big D tackle who's already 295 pounds. This is not one of these guys you're going to have to who's a defensive end that you turn into a defensive tackle. Speaking of which, we're going to get to recruiting later. I'll delve into that later. That's not going to be the crux of the show since we're going to talk all recruiting tomorrow. But speaking of defensive ends that transition to D tackle, Eddrick Houston. High expectations coming into the year for Eddrick. Other than Jeremiah Smith, you guys have heard of him. Eddrick was the highest rated recruit in Ohio State's 2024 class because Julian Sand technically was not a recruit, even if he was at Alabama for like a week. He technically was a transfer. So it went Jeremiah Smith, Eddrick Houston. And those are the two they had to wait on until signing day, if you remember. Everybody remembers Ryan Day getting the weak in the knees thing when he found out he got I think Mark Pantoni probably walked by, or Quinn Temple, one of his consiglieres walked by and gave him the heads up from the hallway. We couldn't see it because, we're looking at Coach Day at the podium, and then he got it from you could see that he got the word, and he was like, oh. But Eddrick, they're also sweating on Eddrick Houston that day. So Eddrick came into the season with high expectations, as we all know. Got hurt on the first day of camp, and it looked serious. It looked serious to the point where people were asking, oh my gosh, did he tear his ACL? Is he out for the year? And then we got word later that day it was probably a hyperextension. So that was good news. But that limited him in camp. Still began the season as a starter, started the first 2 games. I still think he got benched that 3rd game against Ohio University as, disciplinary, but I'm sure he was a little banged up too. And Tywone Malone had been starting since then. I'm not really sure what's going on with Tywone. We'll find out. I still need to see the snap counts. I did not see Big 95 out there, and he's played really well. But I have a few lines in the water trying to find out. Hopefully Tywone Malone's okay. But Eddrick Houston, for the first time since the 2nd game of the year, returned to the starting lineup. Made his 3rd start this season and played well. That's the big thing. It's not just that Eddrick Houston was out there to start the game. 96 was out there making plays. That's huge because we know Ohio State, at least in my opinion, I'm sure the opinion of many of you, they have the best one-tech DT in the country, best nose guard in Caden McDonald, the best. And they just need good, solid play next to him. And they've been getting that from Tywone Malone. And if Eddrick Houston can come on, and obviously his best football is still ahead of him in future seasons, but if he can continue to come on and kind of live up to that potential, that would be huge for this team. And then get Tywone Malone back. Will Smith has been playing well, but, it was, again, Caden McDonald had another great game. He just destroys the line of scrimmage, but it was great seeing Eddrick Houston back, getting him into peak form. When I say, again, peak form for his 2nd year, he's going to be better as a junior than he is as a sophomore, but getting him as good as he can be this year would be huge for this team down the stretch because they're getting the play they need at defensive end. Caden Curry hasn't had a sack in a while, but he had a really nice play against Purdue, which should have been intentional grounding. The guy was not outside the tackle box. You could maybe make the argument that there was a receiver in the vicinity, but that's a stretch. The announcers were convinced he was outside the tackle box. He was not. That means you have to be outside where the tackle lined up. Okay, this is not rocket science. If you're not outside where the right tackle is, if you're rolling right, then you're not outside the tackle box. Okay. Anyway, I also crack up everybody who's just giving Fernando Mendoza the Heisman already. He won it now. Well, I don't know. The gambling apps still have Julian Sand as a slight favorite. Some of them have it tied. So everybody was like, Mendoza won the Heisman. It's like, well, okay, calm down. It's going to work itself out. These guys are probably going to play against each other in the Big Ten championship game. That'll decide it if it's not decided already before then. So it'll work itself out, but it's just funny. I mean, let's compare Julian Sand's stats against Penn State to Fernando Mendoza's stats against that same Penn State defense. Yes, Sand played at home. Yes, I'm aware Sand's got really good receivers. Yes, I'm aware that Indiana's best receiver, Surratt, was out. But still, just look at their overall quarterback rating. Now, Mendoza does have 5 rushing touchdowns. He's got some rushing yards on the year. That'll help him. But I'm still convinced Julian Sand's going to win this award. But it'll take care of itself. I just laugh at all the people who are like, yeah, Mendoza locked it up. It's like, well, because of that last drive and that catch. First of all, that was one of the best catches ever in football. Can we agree on that? That was just tremendous. When you consider the degree of difficulty and then what it meant, it's just you add it all up. I mean, that's one of the best catches that we're ever going to see. I mean, you add it all up. They, instead of losing the game, they win. They, instead of dropping way in the standings, they're going to stay at number 2. You keep your quarterback in the Heisman race. And it was just an amazing catch. I still can't believe he got a toe or 2 down, but great job. Omar Cooper Jr., I believe is his name. Yeah. Kid from Ohio. I think he's a Cincinnati kid. So that was tremendous. But Mendoza has not won the Heisman. Let's be real here. I still think Sand, and again, most betting sites do still have Sand as a slight favorite. I still think Sand's going to win this award. His stats are unbelievable. He goes into this game 80.7% completion percentage, 80.7. It's like, geez, that's the highest by a mile in football, in college football. And then he increases it. It goes up. Ticked up. It's now like close to 81%. It's like 80.9. Because he went, 27 of 33? And that was considered, no one really batted an eye. With 27 of 33, 300 yards, everybody's like, It's like, that's really good. That's really hard to do. Going to a game with 80.7% completion percentage and have that go up. So nice job. I still think Sand's going to win this thing. But getting Eddrick Houston back, to circle back on that, that's huge. Getting him back into form. He's been playing, but getting him back as a starter. And then if you get Tywone Malone, having those two guys together with Will Smith Jr. backing up Caden McDonald, all of a sudden, boom, 4 good, well, 1 great and 3 good defensive tackles. When that was certainly the biggest concern coming into the year on the defense was the backup defensive tackles. I don't think anybody thought Eddrick Houston was going to be a concern. We all knew Caden McDonald was going to be a beast. He's even I was as big of a Caden McDonald supporter or hype man, I guess, during the offseason. If there was one bigger than me, I'd love to see them. And he's even playing better than I expected. I thought he'd be awesome. He's playing even better than I expected. And he actually is putting up good stats for a D tackle, but you can't even look at the stats with D tackles, as we know, especially one-tech D tackles. Now he already has, speaking of tackles, he already has more tackles this season. This was the case before even the Purdue game. He has more tackles this season than Tyleik Williams had all of last year, or Ty Hamilton had all of last year. In 16 games, he already has more tackles. Now, again, Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton were fantastic, and tackles, stats for defensive tackles are misleading. The point is, Caden McDonald is doing all that stuff that doesn't show up in the stat book, where he just crushes the line of scrimmage and lets somebody else make a play. But he's also putting up stats too. So he's doing both. So I love Caden McDonald. So, getting Eddrick Houston back to Eddrick Houston status is going to be huge for this team. All right, Carnell Tate. Yeah, people have asked me, is there more to the story here? I trust Ryan Day on this. I don't think he's lying about this. I think that he just tweaked something during warmups. He was in full uniform. People have asked me, were you sure he wasn't disciplined? I'm like, I haven't heard anything. Would I bet my life on it? No, but I'm like 99.9% sure, because everybody I've asked said, no, he tweaked something. Because if you're disciplined, unless it was something super, super, super minor, and they just decided, okay, you can be dressed, but you're not going to play. But if it's super, super, super minor, you're going to hold him out for the entire game. I think it was a case, and you're probably not going to let him dress if it's disciplinary. That's he's in full uniform. And at first they didn't think he had his helmet, but then he had his helmet. So it looked like he was ready to play if needed. I'm sure they're thinking, why not? We all talked about this. Those 3 games leading into Michigan, now the 2 games leading in, why take any chances? You have a deep team. You should be able to run your C team out there and beat Purdue and UCLA and Rutgers. And why take the chance? If it was even like, well, I'm 98% sure he's going to be fine. Why even take that 2% chance? Let Carnell Tate sit out. Let Brandon Ennis start the game. You get Mylan Graham out there. He did have that drop early, came back, had a catch. And that was a drop. They said that on TV, the DB did a good job of knocking it out. No, it was already coming out of his hands before the DB even touched him. He was just he could feel those footsteps coming out. I mean, that was over the middle with a safety coming in to try and take his head off. So understandable, but hopefully Milan will catch those balls. Good to see him catch one later. Good to see Bryson Rogers have a couple of catches. Good to see Max Clare have 5 catches going back to West Lafayette. And it is funny that Max Clare's younger brother, who plays at Purdue, was playing Max Clare on the scout team last week for Purdue when they were practicing for Ohio State. So that's pretty cool. Young Max Clare, or Max Clare's brother, playing Max Clare in practice. Seems fitting. But good to see Max Clare do that. So, yeah, I think Carnell just tweaked something. I think he's going to be fine against UCLA. Yeah, my experience is if a guy is sitting out a game because of disciplinary reasons, you're not going to have him in full uniform. You just are not going to do that. And then we'll see about the offensive lineman. Josh Padilla didn't even make the trip. But that was, again, I think it's probably one of those situations, what I've heard with Padilla, that he got banged up, as we know, against Penn State. He was obviously the one that Ryan Day was talking about last Tuesday when he said, of the 3 guards that got banged up against Penn State, including the starters, Luke Montgomery and Tegra Shabola, of those 3, one of them is, questionable, and the other 2 should be fine. So we know Luke and Tegra are fine, and Josh is the one that's banged up. I imagine that this was if that was the Michigan game a couple days ago, he would have played. He would have been available to play. So I don't think it's a long-term thing at all. For Ryan Day to say last week that it was questionable if he would play this past week against Purdue, that tells me it's not long-term. So we shall find out. But they need to get Padilla back. Why? Because Tegra had a good game against Penn State the previous game and then did not play well at all against Purdue. And it's just one of those things. I mean, some things in life are it's just simple. We have so many complicated things in life. Some things are just simple when you look at them and you break them down. Okay, so there you have the 5 starters on the offensive line. Only one of them has been rotated out of the games this year. The other 4 never get rotated out when the game's on the line, but one does. That's Tegra. Every game he was getting rotated out. Still, he started every game. He played the most snaps. It's not like it was rotating 50-50. But it was like, he was getting like 66-33, something like that. The point is, man, if he's playing well, he's a 4th-year junior, you wouldn't be doing that. And it's not like these guys are just playing great. Ethan Onionwa early in the year was the one going in there right guard. And then he wasn't getting the job done either. Tegra was still struggling, so they put Padilla in there, and Padilla was grading out well. I don't know if you guys put a lot of validity in PFF. I think they do a good job. Padilla was grading out very high. Tegra was grading out low, except the Penn State game. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's getting – it's a guy that started all 16 games last year. That Penn State game was his 8th start of this year. Started 24 straight games. I'm thinking, okay, now he's got it. Got a year and a half of starting experience under his belt. He's a 4th-year guy. And he goes out there and plays poorly against Purdue. So even though is Josh Padilla the ideal size for a right guard? No. Tegra kind of is. Kind of like maybe even a little shorter than him. Tegra really looks like a tackle to me, but he doesn't have the feet to play tackle, but he's tackle size. You want those guards. Luke Montgomery is a good example of what you want a guard to look like. So is Josh Padilla a little undersized? Yes, but it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the fight of the dog, the size of the fight in the dog, because this guy is a dog. He's a former wrestler. And to me, if you're a really good former heavyweight wrestler, that almost like adds like 10 to 15 pounds just based on your, not like literally, but based on how stout you are. I hate to use this guy as an example, but he plays for the Cleveland Browns now. So we have Browns fans in the chat. I know that for sure. Mason Graham, great example of a guy. He's a little undersized. Then you play against him. He's throwing dudes around. I'm not saying Josh Padilla is Mason Graham, but like Mason, and I know Mason Graham's a D tackle, not an offensive lineman. The point is he was a little undersized for a D tackle. Even when the Browns took him 5th overall, people were like, taking a D tackle that's under 300 pounds. It's not named Aaron Donald in the 1st round and 5th overall. And he's having a really good rookie year. So Josh Padilla, he's 300 pounds. It's not like he's 280. He is stout enough to play right guard, and the stats back it up. So hopefully they get Josh Padilla back, because I think he is the best right guard on this team. Good to see Ian Moore, even though we hope everything's okay with Phillip Daniels. And I think hopefully everything is okay. He was questionable. Another guy that probably could have played if they needed him to, but why risk it? Why risk it? And Ian Moore, a young man that grew up not too far away from a Ross-Ade Stadium, made his first career start as a redshirt freshman at right tackle. And then Ethan Onionwa, who they brought in, He's getting paid right around 7 figures. Very low 7 figures, but 7 figures. Yeah, he's getting $1 million to be the 8th man on the offensive line. It's a good gig if you can get it. First, he was going to be a starter. Then he was bumped to being the 6th man. Then Padilla became the 6th man. Oniano was the 7th man. And then you're thinking, well, Daniels doesn't play. Oniano will start at right tackle. No, Ian Moore did. So Oniano was basically like the 8th man. I mean, basically, he is the 8th man. We're living in a world where a 5th-year senior, so it's not like it's like a guy they brought in as a freshman they're paying, like, the future's bright, right? A 5th-year senior who is the 8th man on the offensive line is making $1 million. That's the world we're living in right now. Welcome to college football. And that's a little bit of an aberration, I know. The way they look at it, though, I talked to some people that are, do stuff with collectives. The collectives are all like within Ohio State now. It's all like a, collective effort, pun intended. The way they look at it is, yeah, we overspent for Ethan Oniano, but we got a great deal with Philip Daniels. So I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, it worked out. So like, you got to pretend maybe Daniels is the guy you pay big money for, and you got Oniano on a discount. But Philip Daniels has been really good overall this year, and I think he's going to be fine. All right, what else we want to get to here? Oh, people wanted me to talk about Brian Hartline. I don't think he's going to Penn State. Now, I wouldn't bet my car on it, but I'd bet like a decent amount of cash on it. I just don't see it happening. Could be wrong. I just don't see it happening. So there you go. I addressed the Brian Hartline. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm about 95% sure, if not more, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. Because if they back the truck up with money, I mean, is he really going to turn that down? But I still think they're going to go after Mike Elko. People are like, why would he leave Texas A&M? Well, he's from Jersey. Mike Elko is. Played college ball at Penn. Didn't have any previous ties to A&M. I don't know. I've never. And it depends on what he thinks of like the Happy Valley State College life. Does he like being a little secluded? Does he like being up in the mountains, or does he like being down in, College Station down there in Texas? I don't know. He might prefer it down there. He might like the summers really hot, and the winters not super cold up in the mountains and Happy Valley. I don't know. But the fact that he's from Jersey, born and raised in Jersey, and then went to school at Penn, played football, and has got ties to the Midwest. I know Penn State's not technically Midwest, but he coached at Notre Dame. The only place he doesn't really have previous ties is like the Deep South or Texas, where he is now. Texas isn't really Deep South, but you know what I mean. Deep in the heart of Texas. So I still think they're going to go after Mike Elko and give him whatever he wants, and they'll have to give him a lot because Texas A&M has tons of money, and we'll see. Texas A&M might keep him, but I think that's who they're going to go after. So I don't think they're going to get Hartline. Wishful thinking, maybe. I don't know. We'll go with that. And Isaiah West continues to prove that he, in the coaching staff's mind, in my opinion, again, some things in life are simple, some things are complicated. This is simple. Just the fact that he now consistently is getting more carries per game than C.J. Donaldson and James Peoples, sometimes combined. That says it all. Now, Donaldson still is going to be the goal line back, and I love the way he got low and kept his legs driving on that touchdown. That's what we've been talking about. Don't get knocked backwards. Keep your legs driving. Get low. Don't run straight up and get knocked backwards. Use those 232 pounds. We saw that. So if Donaldson can do that, that's fantastic. And they're going to need James Peoples. I'm convinced of that too with this long season. We're only 9 games into a 16-game season, just past the halfway mark. 7 games to go if things go well. So they're going to need all 4 of those guys, but you now have Isaiah West. This is, he got 9 carries again, looked good doing it. Now he's got to be better in pass protection. Can't be out there getting your quarterback killed. And he's a true freshman. He's got to learn to be better in pass pro. And all of that matters, This is what coaches, they probably get so frustrated with people in the media, fans, whatever. Why isn't this guy playing? They're like, well, they don't see what we see at practice. Maybe he's not doing good in pass pro, or he's putting the ball on the ground too much. They see all this stuff. So I always try and caution myself. I'm like, why isn't this guy playing? There's probably some stuff I don't know. But they clearly like Isaiah West. He had 1 bad pass block. They put him back in there. He did take him out right after that, but they did put him back in and gave him a lot of carries, and he looked good doing it. One more thing before we get back to recruiting. Okay, Ryan Day's strategy that he came up with at some point last year of this is going to be a super long year. I think it was actually going into last year. I don't think he did it like midstream last year. He's like, all right, kicking the playoffs from 4 to 12 teams. We're still going to have a Big Ten championship game. Last year they didn't play in one, but still he's thinking, all right, this is going to be a long season. We like going up tempo and playing tempo, but instead of that, how about we just go, just take the throttle off a little bit, take the foot off the gas and slow down the tempo a little bit. And what does that do? Makes a lot of us frustrated because we want them to get out there and just win the game by 60. But no, I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's Ryan Day and his staff playing checkers or playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers, because what's it doing right now? I mean, Ohio State, they're efficient. You have to be efficient or that doesn't work, but they're running the clock. And what have they done so far? They've saved an entire game's worth of snaps, And in a long season, you just remove a game from the schedule. As Jake Butt was saying, and I know where Jake went to college, but he does a fantastic job. As he was saying during the broadcast, that's like a third bye week right there, built in a long season. You got the 2 real bye weeks, and then basically the amount of snaps Ohio State is playing is a full less game that they're going to have to play this year. So in a violent sport, and they still overall are in very good shape health-wise, but now that you're seeing some injuries, there was like through the first 8 games, it was like the availability report was a joke. There was like nobody of consequence on there like ever. And then, obviously the O-line got banged up against Penn State, and then Phillip Daniels must have got hurt during practice because then he was questionable and didn't play. Carnell Tate didn't play. So the injuries are starting to get into November where, of course, there's going to be injuries. But overall, this team is in very good shape health-wise, even with the recent guys that are banged up. And again, nothing serious. Padilla is the only one that was like thought to be, it might be somewhat, he might miss a week or 2. But again, it's not like season ending or anything like that. So they're in very good shape health-wise. And I just love that. I love that because, and I'm thinking that wasn't just like some like, oh, how about we do this? I bet you anything, and I can't wait to ask Ryan Day about this. They did some analytic study. They looked at the advanced metrics and came up with this. Like, what about this? You look at the advanced, what if we huddle up and work the clock? And this would give our guys less wear and tear on their bodies. And look how fresh they looked in the playoffs last year. They were just beating up teams. They were by far the more physical team of anybody they played. All 4 games, Ohio State was by far more physical than Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame. Those are 4 physical teams, but like Ohio State was way, way, way more physical. Knocking running backs out of the game early, cracking helmets twice with Nico. I mean, it just and they were laying people out, and there was never a targeting penalty. Arch Manning played 1 play in the Cotton Bowl last year and got smoked, but it was a legal hit, and that was one of many examples. They were out there just crushing people, but doing it legally. The offensive line, down 2 guys that nobody thought they could lose, and Seth McLaughlin and Josh Simmons, they're out there. They were more physical than any D-line they played. So Ohio State, they were fresh, physical. And remember, like, it wasn't that long ago, people were questioning Mickey Marotti. You can't find those people. Those people are hanging out with the same people that questioned the Matt Patricia hiring. Okay? They're in witness protection somewhere because you don't hear anybody saying anything about Mick Marotti, do you? You don't hear anybody criticizing the Matt Patricia hire, do you? In fact, now people are acting like they didn't even say that. I hear people, maybe some radio hosts here in Columbus, that were completely going out of their way to bash it, and now are like, yeah, I might have been a little skeptical. It's like, no, you were more than a little skeptical. You were saying it was a horrible hire, but I think if people are wrong, they should just admit they're wrong. That's just me. All right, let's get back to recruiting to finish the show. They're crushing it, my friends. So like I said, it started last Thursday. They flipped 4-star corner. You got the spatula out. Jay Timmons from Florida State. Love that. Getting a Jay Timmons. And then the very next day, getting Mason Wilhelm, Lakewood St. Edward. 3-star, but I love it. They're stocking up on Ohio linemen. I absolutely love it. And how does like a former 3-star like Austin Saraveld working out? They also love Jake Cook. And I know Gabe Van Sickle's not an Ohio guy, but he's Ohio adjacent enough because he left that state up north to come here. They like him as well. He was a 3-star. So you get these big guys that, they're just like kind of, their body's just filling out. They're just kind of getting used to being such a big dude. They're still growing at that age, 16, 17 when they're getting recruited. Some of these guys are still growing when they're 18, 19. I know it was a different sport. I'll never forget Evan Turner grew 2 inches between his freshman and sophomore year at Ohio State. Evan Turner was 6'5" his freshman year. And then Thad Matta was like, yeah, he grew a full 2 inches. We're like, really? And then we saw him. We're like, oh, yeah, he did. And he was a legit 6'7". So yeah, I mean, these guys are still growing. So a lot of these like offensive linemen that are 3 stars, I love what they're doing. I mean, you still want to get like your share of 5 stars and 4 stars, but Mason Wilhelm, I tell you what, Matt Wilhelm, his father, his 2002 season, and he was named All-American and they won the national championship. But I still think, because I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for being, that was one of the best seasons we've seen from an Ohio State middle linebacker. Number 35, Matt Wilhelm, was great that year. Great. And finished it off with maybe his best performance in the national championship game against Miami. Just out there just laying people out. I think he got the kill. C. Grant obviously got the kill shot on Ken Dorsey, the last play of the game. But Ken Dorsey had to go to the hospital after that game, as I'm sure most of you know. Miami quarterback Ken Dorsey had to go to the hospital after that game. And that when Matt Wilhelm drove him into the ground, which would probably be a penalty today. Did I say probably? Then it was a legal hit. That was the one where you could see like the life went out of Ken Dorsey. I'm still convinced that Matt Wilhelm hit didn't happen. That Dorsey might have avoided hospitalization that night. But hospitalization is what he got. I love getting Mason Wilhelm. And guys, I mean, I love getting Jay Timmons and Mason Wilhelm. But I tell you what, I'm definitely most giddy about what happened yesterday. Getting Emanuel Ruffin, high 4-star D tackle from the South, 6'4", 295 already. Love that. So much for Larry Johnson is hurting the team. He's doing a great job coaching the defensive line. He's still crushing it in recruiting. So that's a pretty good little stretch of recruiting there. Thursday through Sunday, you get like 2 studs, and I think Mason Wilhelm's going to be a stud. I'm going to say they got 3 studs. But, so you get a flip, you get a big D tackle from the South, and you get a Buckeye legacy you're not just giving him a scholarship because he's a Buckeye legacy. Mason Wilhelm's going to be I think he'll be a guard, but I think he's going to be a really good guard here at Ohio State. Probably redshirt him, then you get him for another 4 years after that. I do think eventually we're going to go to the 5 for 5. You get 5 years to play 5, no redshirt, but they're not doing it yet because you have too many people in college football who all want that to happen, and college basketball. Heavy hitters who are all in agreement. ADs, coaches, they all want it. So I think eventually that's going to happen. All right, last thing with recruiting. So Ohio State now in their 2026 class, which everybody was hot and bothered by. I shouldn't say everybody. Most of you are still basking. But some people that took a little break from basking were grousing about recruiting. Well, you look at it now, and again, recruiting is always going to be important. It's not as important as it used to be, but it's still very important. But they're still going to do a good job in the portal this offseason. I don't know who they're going to get. Ohio State will do a good job in the portal. They've proven that they will. We'll probably never see anything like we saw in 2024. That was the perfect storm with Saban retiring. And then in addition to that, you get Quinshawn, you get Will Howard. I mean, it was just crazy what they did. Julian Sand was technically a transfer. That's in reference to Saban. And of course, Caleb Downs was a transfer. And Will Kazmarek was a good get as well. So they did a fantastic job in the portal. And it was like they only got like 5 or 6 guys. So 2024 is going to be the gold standard. They did a good job this past offseason. They're going to do a good job next offseason adding to the roster with portal kids. But you still need to do a good job in recruiting, and they are. This was a class everybody was saying, oh, they're going to finish outside of the top 10 and da-da-da-da-da. Well, how about this? 24 commits now in this class. Signing day's coming up. What we got? About a month till the early signing period. I still miss the one signing day in February, but that's all right. So 24 commits for the Buckeyes. That puts them 7th overall in the country in the 24/7 Sports Composite. And then the number I really like looking at is average player ranking. The Ohio State Buckeyes are 5th in the country in average player ranking in this class, this 2026 class. So is this the best class we've ever seen at Ohio State? No. This is a really good class they're putting together. A really good class. And again, they're going to augment that with a good portal class. And last time I checked, they have guys like Julian Sand and Jeremiah Smith coming back on next year's team. Bo Jackson. So the future is bright. The present is bright. The past is bright. It's a great time to be a Buckeye. All right, my friends, I'm going to close up shop here right about the half-hour mark. Thank you very much for joining me for today's show. I appreciate it very much. Again, I'll be with you tomorrow talking recruiting with the Grand Poobah, Mark Porter, and Garrick Hodge. So join us tomorrow. We'll probably get going at 9 a.m. I'll check with the guys, make sure that works for them. It'll either be 9, 9:15, or 9:30. We'll shoot for 9 a.m. though tomorrow, talking recruiting with you guys. And then Ryan Day's press conference tomorrow is actually moved up an hour. because it's Veterans Day and Ohio State's closed tomorrow. So instead of it being at noon, it's going to be at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So I'll remind you guys on tomorrow's show, but the Ryan Day press conference, 11 a.m. tomorrow, not noon. All right, guys, thanks again. I appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Go Bucks. Still basking.